want to start this is, how many of you guys have actually experienced playing in an orchestra? That's more than I expected. You guys have high school orchestras or like youth orchestra, that kind of thing? Youth orchestra? Okay, so I'm assuming most of you guys have played in concert band and cafeteria. Everybody play in marching band? Or is there anyone here who plays in an orchestra and concert band and not in marching band? Kind of curious about that. No. All right, so, I mean, I've been on this, so I played 5 years in marching band. I did drum corps for 3 years. I did indoor line. I did all that stuff. So, I kind of want to figure out, for me, what's the difference in playing in an orchestra and kind of playing in marching band that I think makes playing in orchestra special. I mean, does anyone have any thoughts, kind of?
It's all about finesse instead of just
finesse, right? What for me, like, marching band is about precision. Marching band is about doing exactly what X other people are doing, 6 other snare drummers or whatever. And there's less individuality. To me, obviously, marching band, you got 10 minutes of music, whatever, about that you're rehearsing for over and over and over and over again. Whereas, we come in an orchestra, we've got maybe an hour, 45 minutes of music, with probably half, 1/3 as much rehearsal time. I think that's the big difference for me is kind of the individuality versus the group precision. But I think the biggest thing, honestly, is most orchestra parts are easy, right? It's like 6th grade level of music. I can sit down and I can play, let's see. Right, I can play, let's see. That's an audition excerpt, believe it or not. I mean, it sounds like it's like, you step in the band room, pick up the drumsticks the first time, what do they teach you? Quarter notes, right? So, I mean, I was thinking about this. Everything's so easy. Kind of, what separates an average timpanist from a really good timpanist? There are a few different things. I mean, does anybody have any thoughts, kind of? Expression, that's a great one, yeah. Musicality, expression, anybody else?
sound quality.
Sound quality, definitely. Think about any kind of pop, think about a singer, and kind of what makes different singers unique is their voice, sound quality, more than anything. I think what importantly also is ensemble skills. Like I said, you're not necessarily always rehearsing for precision, especially when you get to higher and higher levels. There's less rehearsal time. The rehearsal time is spent more on the conductor trying to get more expression, musicality.
I'm confident in your playing vocals.
What is that?
Confident.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something we all need, I think, especially when you're playing tuning. Definitely, the fundamentals are there. I guess what I'd say an average timpanist, I'm assuming you got the fundamentals there. You got good rhythm, good time, and a good intonation. That's always got it's kind of like the baseline level. I think one thing that doesn't get mentioned is adaptiveness, kind of being able to change to fit into the orchestra, because you might come in, I'm playing Beethoven 5 this week, so I can give a kind of an example. There's a section you realize, oh wait, strings are rushing here, and I can't be stubborn and say, no, you're wrong. You just have to go with it. It's not marching band where everybody listens back. It's the strings are the king in the orchestra. So for me, like going from marching to as a youngster to like getting more into orchestral stuff like that. I think that's kind of like the joy in all this is kind of you get that individuality, you get this, playing and just playing with the group and being able to play with a great sound. Like, to me, I like the way playing Timothy feels. I like the way the sticks come off the heads and things like that. So I guess out of those things, if you guys have, I'll ask this, what are all the things that might affect your sound? If you want to have a great sound, what are the things that might affect that? Okay, start this way.
Context.
Context, what do you mean by that?
So like if you're playing in maybe like a different type of composer.
Right.
I'm not familiar with different ones, but I know there's definitely differences between.
Right, so like style. is what
Yeah, I
you're
would like
saying.
to connect with something.
So I keep going now if anybody has any.
How much touch is it in?
Exactly like your touch, I would say. Let's just keep,
I guess, the heads.
definitely,
They are.
definitely. And keep going. What'd you say?
Blank.
Playing zones, absolutely. You guys are doing well.
The extra type of mallet you're using?
Definitely. Anybody else have anything?
Technique.
Technique, yeah, touch, that kind of thing. I watched Jersey Surf in the late 90s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
We hit a few of them. I think one that gets missed a lot is the hall, the actual room you're playing in. I play in the North Carolina Assembly. We travel everywhere. Our hall is super big and boomy. And then sometimes we play, we go to the New Bern and we play in a convention center where the ceiling's like probably not even where those, where the curtains up there are. So your sound, it's a totally different environment. It's got carpet on the floor. It's totally dry. I think we hit most of these. The other thing I would say is orchestrations, what other people are playing around you. And I think if I put these things in order, I'd actually say kind of head quality is probably number one ahead of anything. Because if the heads are in really bad shape, if they're not clear, it's really hard to play in tune. And it's just hard to sound good. Older heads don't rebound as well. One thing we didn't mention is instrument quality, what instruments you're using, the condition they're in. Like I said, the hall, the orchestration, those are things you can't control. Your stick choice, your playing spot, and touch, like kind of vaguely in that order. So if I go back to marching band one more time, like, do you guys, you go to, let's say, a drum corps show, you see like Santa Clara Vanguard or Cadets or something like that, like what makes those kind of lines stand out to you? Anybody?
How precise they are.
Precise?
And how alike that technique is, like no one
Right.
really stands out.
Right,
It's just one
right.
big, like.
That's a good, I guess, for me, does anybody else?
They're really intense.
Intense, that's one thing, definitely. And I guess to me, when I went back 10 years later, maybe, once I started playing professionally, the one thing I noticed that I didn't notice when I was younger is how relaxed all the best drum lines are. They're intense, but they're relaxed. And you go down to some of the other, I guess the younger drum lines, and they want to fake that intensity. The thing they do is they like tense up and just like trying to do that I look like an idiot doing it, but they're like really cool like look on their face, trying to look cool, but they miss the relaxation part. And I always something that I don't think I ever really realized until I got older. So if we're talking about sound, that's the number one thing on any instrument is you gotta be relaxed. It doesn't matter what you're playing. It's just like, and somehow maintain the intensity and the musicality while you're still relaxed. So talking about timpani, for me, no matter how you play, any good technique is going to be based on using the natural rebound of the head. Right? A lot of people might think, well, I want a deeper sound, so I'm going to play through the head and into the bowl. And kind of what that winds up doing is just get a thuddy kind of banging sound. but you know, they generally don't. I'm just gonna throw this on the head. The way I play, you know, you kind of hear, obviously hear the difference between that and trying to force where the pitch of the head breaks up. Basically, fundamentally, that's kind of the great thing about timpanis. They have pitch, right? That's what makes them special. So for me, I'm always trying to emphasize kind of that pitch and get as much pitch ideas from as I can. I mean, same thing, just legato strokes. Basically, let's see. I think another very important thing is all your strokes should really come from your wrist. Generally. Starts getting heavy, thuddy, and bangy. For me, stylistically, I want to try to play light. Try to the drums to ring as much as I possibly can. And we talked about playing spot. I think that gets overlooked a lot. I think what tends to happen, what I find is that most people play too far into the head. I find it sounds good on top of the drums, but as you get farther away, it sounds stutty. You kind of lose pitch, you lose clarity, and also you get better rebound. I mean, I would say, I don't want to measure, maybe I play like 3 inches off the rim, off the lip, not, 6 or whatever that is. I'm not too great at judging the distance, but I mean, you can hear the difference. When you start getting into the middle, it gets boomy, thuddy. You lose clarity and articulation and things like that. Obviously, play too close. It's thin. I think you can feel the sweet spot. To me, I can feel right about there where the drum just wants to throw my sticks off the head. Right. Let's see. We talked about stick choice, which I guess this could be a matter of preference, but when I play in the orchestra, if I'm trying to get more articulation, my first line of defense is always going to harder sticks. I would much rather play with a legato touch on a hard stick than kind of try to punch through softer stick. And once again, sometimes there's just nothing you can do. You have to learn to articulate with harder sticks or softer sticks at times. But for me, I'd much rather, I'd much rather be playing in, let's see. And that, in an orchestra, that's probably not going to work. I would much rather just go and play, maintain the looseness, maintain the relaxation, all of that. Right, I generally I have to play hard sticks all the time because the hall here is just so boomy that it's almost impossible. It can almost never be articulate enough. All right, so yeah, I guess we talked also about musicality and fundamentally why are you a musician? Why are we doing this? Right? Any questions? Any guys? Thoughts? Why do you do this? What makes it fun?
You get to hit stuff.
You get to hit stuff, right? You just you find it fun just sitting in your room and playing by yourself, or would you rather just play? But I don't know.
Well, for me, especially with the keyboard instruments like marimba and xylophone, it's really fun to be playing the melodies going up and down the keyboard.
Okay.
Just different spacings and memorizing the motions.
Okay.
I personally just really enjoy finding how I fit within the entire orchestra. get some human emotions out in like words or other concrete facets of just
Right.
non-artistic expressions. So if you try to express emotions through artistry, it can, I guess, become more powerful or more meaningful to more people.
Right. I mean, I think that's kind of fundamentally why we do it. Even if you don't say it, is we want to entertain people. We want to communicate with people. You know, it's fun. Of course, it is fun. Practicing is fun. Playing by yourself is fun. But ultimately, we want to play for an audience and get these ideas across to people. You know, convey your emotions, to communicate, to you know, interpret. I think that when we talk about, I don't love the word musicality, but I don't think there's a better word. I think that's what we talk about. That's what we mean when we're talking about musicality. Is how am I getting across the emotion? How am I communicating with the audience? So let's see. If we get into some classical repertoire, for example, I always like to think when you're going in an orchestra. Well, when you're playing a drum line, everything is written out, specified for you. I think one of the things we have to deal with as timpanists and classical percussionists is that a lot of the parts just don't have that much information in them. And you can go in and you can just cite it down and play what's just play what's on the page exactly, but it's really not doing much. I think the most important, it's like you have to love the music. You have to listen to the music. You have to listen to recordings, you have to check scores, you have to know what's going on, what the sound is that you're striving for. Like, let me see if we can put a stand up for a second. How many of you guys, we are familiar with the kind of the last movement of Beethoven 5? You know, a few of you guys. Right, so let's see if I just kind of play what's on the page. If I just play what's on the page, here's what I get, right? Right, so how do I learn that? You listen to recordings, you look at the scores, you listen to what's going on around you. If I play it in the orchestra, it winds up sounding a lot different. It winds up sounding, that's what we want to do, especially when we're playing it alone as an excerpt. The idea is I want someone listening to me to know that I know how the music goes and know what the orchestra sounds like doing that. And of course, if you just play it completely obliterating fortissimo the whole time, you're probably going to get this from the conductor when it's just the strings. So obviously what happens in there, you're playing with the brass in the first 4 bars, and then the next phrase, you're just playing with the strings. The brass kind of drops out. Another thing you kind of might have noticed is I'm not always playing the note values on the page, playing timpani, same thing with percussion. It's another thing you've got to learn the music and know how long to play. I think I always hear people starting up, you just can't get away from that idea of not playing what's on the page, or not playing exactly what's on the page. So generally, I mute as muffled as little as I can get away with, because I think it sounds better. The instruments want to ring, and as much ring as I can get away with is what I want to do. Obviously, that doesn't always work in orchestra. You got to mute a lot more. But I guess my point is, don't be bound by what's on the page. And this applies to classical percussion parts too. Obviously, you got to play the notes, but the way these composers wrote, they weren't giving you the exact, all the information you needed. You got to interpret what they're looking for. So, like I said, I think you have to know the piece, because if you go in unprepared, you can totally just destroy the entire ensemble. Because our instrument's very easy to hear by everybody. One of the nice things about the position, I guess you have a lot of power in that way. And I think, this goes back to styles. You need to kind of play what the composer intended. I've heard, are you guys familiar with Beethoven 9, first movement? So I hear a lot of people come in and kind of play it like trying to make a lot of music out of it. Let's see. So, and I guess kind of my point is there, you gotta play with, you can't go too far. Audition excerpts aren't really etudes. You can't do whatever you want. You gotta play what the composer wanted. You have to listen to recordings. That would, the beginning of Beethoven 9 to me, it's pretty strong. You can't go back and drop into a forte piano roll there. Let's see, some of this. Talked about, let's see. Ensemble skills in orchestra. I think most importantly, is the brass are our friends. We always want to play with the brass, play with the trumpets, kind of try to match what they're doing. Play with the trombones. I think where things start to get tricky in orchestras, like I said, the strings are generally leading. And what that means is, this is a shorter stage, but when I'm playing, if I'm playing with the strings are probably in front of the stage, 60 feet away, whatever, 50 feet away. And kind of you get in this awkward position of you can't play with what you hear. You kind of have to, you can't get comfortable, you have to play. If it's a good conductor, you can play with the conductor. But you have to get in the situation of anticipating the beat, which gets to be it can be kind of tricky and uncomfortable because you feel like you're kind of hanging out there all by yourself, doing nothing. It sounds very uncomfortable. I wish it would be nice in the ideal world if everybody would just listen back to the percussion. It doesn't really work that way. So let's see. I'm going to hit one more. I was talking about additivity. So for me, it's important to just practice every possible way that you can play something, practice different tempos. You can't get set in your own ways. You have to do what the conductor wants. No matter how much you agree or disagree with it. So it's just really important to know what sticks. Every stick you have that'll work. Obviously, I have a lot of sticks. I haven't used that many of them in orchestra, but I have a ton of them. So that's kind of hitting on all of that stuff. I have a few other things. Let me ask: is there any like what kind of anything that you guys would want to hear about topics? Okay, let's start. What do you have?
So, how do you deal with like latency of sound with like what you hear right on the drums and then what's heard out in the hall? Like, does it line up with the brass at certain points?
I mean, generally, you know, I guess physics, the closer that someone is to you, you can play with them. So if it's the brass, I can just play as a section. And I hate to say the only way, either if you have a good conductor, you can play right on the beat, but it's just something that you have to get used to, that takes experience, that like, what you're hearing is like that split second behind where you actually need to play. And I don't really think there's a better answer than experience and recording. If you listen to recordings of yourself playing with an ensemble, like when I was in school, I would record every rehearsal with a little portable recorder, just to hear where that kind of lined up, kind of the latencies. You almost have to, you just have to get used to it kind of being uncomfortable almost all the time. I'll make a quick plug. If any of you guys ever want to go to the timpani masterclass, there's a Coy Duff masterclass, and one of the things they'll do is to kind of demonstrate this idea is take a metronome and a recorder, take the metronome, put it next to the recorder. If you stand right next to the recorder and you clap to what you hear, it's going to sound perfect. If you walk 50 feet away from the recorder, it sounds late. You just have to learn through experience to where to put it ahead of the beat. Anything? Anybody else? All right.
What is the specific ways with the whole thing?
I don't think there is a specific way. I mean, I can go over my technique. I mean, I hold like wrist French grip. My technique is more like turning a doorknob like that. And the idea behind it, so we're talking about rebound. You never want to kill the rebound. I was talking about that. So, like I said, if you look at German guys, Amsterdam, they play more flat-handed, and they kind of just let the stick just bounce. I mean, you can see how it rebounds. I'm not doing anything. The idea behind this technique is you're kind of assisting the rebound. Once you feel it stop, you're kind of lifting. So I don't think there's like a specific way you're supposed to hold the stick, but that's the way I've been taught. That's the way I play. You know, I generally hold the sticks back farther. So my goal is to get. I mean, the goal for me is always I want to be able to get the drum to ring as much as possible, and then dial it back from there. Sorry. Anybody? Questions?
Did you always set up the drums like German?
When I started going to college, yeah, that's how
CIM?
I went to Carnegie Mellon,
Oh, okay.
and you know that's the way I was taught, and it's kind of the way I just got comfortable with. I switched back and forth quite a bit, but when I bought drums for myself, I wound up buying German system drums. I mean, it's Cleveland, the Coy Duff lineage, I guess. I find it just works better for me. I like it better. I don't think there's any like right way to do it. It's certainly a lot easier if you set it like American, because everywhere you go, it's gonna have the right kind of drums. All right, let me get the back.
I want to talk a little more about the grips. Are there any like technical pros and cons between French grip and German grip? Like for example, I'm playing Dvorak's 4th Symphony and I'm using German grip, but I don't really know the benefits of using French grip if I were to do that.
I mean, I think if you wanted to talk like really theoretical, I think probably the idea behind German grip is they want a darker sound. And they're more more, like I said, more throwing this thing. And also, obviously depends in the grips and other details, but for me, you know, why I do French grip is I want this thing to come off the head and lift, and I'm trained to be able to play like a lighter. The idea is kind of to play, yeah. And I should say, like, light is not necessarily the same as soft. It's a different thing. It's just kind of, you know, for me, I want in general always be playing with a legato stroke, and I don't, you know, I don't necessarily, I'm not kind of the person who's like really prescriptive about what's going on, what you're playing with. It just comes back to, once again, the rebound. You know, if you're playing German grip, you're going to be letting the sticks come off the head as opposed to throwing them at the head and kind of distorting the pitch.
Do you use gauges often?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what were you going to say?
Do you have the what's it, hinder?
No.
The lock pedal?
Yeah, Dresden style pedals.
Yeah, those.
Yeah.
The gauges on those, is it like just a really common thing for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the thing about gauges, the thing about the drums I play on is they're my drums. I put the heads on, I set the gauges. I'm the only person who ever plays on them pretty much. So I know I can trust them. But of course, even with plastic heads, the pitch changes. You know, I go to a rehearsal at 10 a.m. and what was perfectly in tune when I get to the concert is now like a quarter tone sharp. I don't know the physics behind it. You know, theoretically, plastic heads are supposed to be stable, but they change. And the other thing about those drums, which is nice, is you have a fine tuner, so you can, with something like this, these don't have gauges, you know, you have to adjust all the tabs, which gets annoying. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's not, you can't use it as a crutch because the gauge doesn't tell you the pitch, it just tells you where the pedal is, right? So if the gauge is wrong, you're gonna be wrong. It's important to still develop your ear, but I don't think there's anyone, any professional timpanist out there that's going to say, I never use gauges. You know, it's an important thing to be able to use. Like I said, you can't trust them so that I get your ear. Right?
Like, how do you, like, what's the best way to, like, develop, like, tuning using, like, tuning forks? Because I've, like, always used, like, a pitch pipe and just, like, feels like a fantasy.
Okay. I mean, to me, I try, like, when I use a tuning fork, I just kind of hit it and I do that, right? And I try to get the sound. I think the most important thing, especially when you're starting, is to listen to it long enough that you feel like you've got the pitch in your head, right? And maybe you can sing it, you know, if you're just practicing. Not a good singer, but you can practice, try to get it locked in. And if you're matching the pitch, I generally I just give it to my ear. And you have to learn your intervals if you just want to use one tuning fork. And to that point, I probably wouldn't necessarily, unless it's a perfect interval, I might not necessarily leave the fork at my ear. I guess I can go into a kind of a brief version on tuning here, which might be helpful. I mean, the important thing is, right, we got to get this initial pitch, we got to get it right. And then, once you have the initial pitch, you really got to trust that it's right. Because if you start adjusting everything, you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. So once I have this initial pitch, I put the tuning fork down and I tune off the drums, right? I think also once you, with fourths and fifths, it helps to play them together so you can kind of hear the interval ringing as opposed to, you know, if it's a little, you can't even get it any higher, but it's a little off. you're going in. Like, how am I gonna tune this if I'm tuning 4 drums? Like, let's see what I can tune. You know, let's say I'm playing Chite 4 maybe. I'd say, okay, I usually want to tune to, so I'm going to start in the C. So. And I'd say I'm going to tune the F because it's a perfect 4th, but I can't get an F on this, so just forget that. And then you get a triad, right? It's a minor triad. But it's going to be minor chord, but. And then you can check with your stick slightly. I think it's good then, because sometimes the pitch sounds different. I think it's a thing you just constantly have to work on. I know I've talked to people who have listened to timpani auditions, and they say, after 2 hours, I can't even really hear the pitch confidently anymore, because with these instruments, it's not a string that has a perfect harmonic series. It's got kind of a off-kilter harmonic series, so it's sometimes you hear overtones, you start hearing stuff weird, and it's just something that actually hearing the pitch of the drums. Like, my wife's a cellist and she has perfect pitch. She took a percussion tech class and she's like, tuning timpani is one of the hardest things I've done because it's just not the same as other instruments. You know, work at the piano, work on intervals. I think it just helps to be really deliberate about it and not deliberate about learning how to tune, and deliberate about the tuning process. You know what I mean? And obviously, if you can record rehearsals and stuff, listen to those, because sometimes you think you're in tune sitting back here, and you listen to it and you're like, holy crap, I'm like a half step sharp. And I think even some of the best timpanists in the world that I've had master classes with have mentioned that like, you know, my first year in this orchestra, I listened to recordings, I didn't even realize I was out of tune until, so you just kind of have to learn what your drums sound like being in tune. I hate to give like an answer, like it just takes time, but that's kind of the truth. So.
What do you take into consideration for mallet choice,
For mallet choice, well, that's a good question because I can get into. First of all, it depends on, like I mentioned orchestration before, so it depends on what's going on. Okay, I'm going to channel one of my old teachers. What's the difference between an audition and playing in an orchestra?
Audition, you play everything,
Yeah.
really consistent.
Sort of. What's the simplest difference between, and, but, right, there's no orchestra in an audition, right? So that's kind of the fundamental idea behind this, like, go back to playing. If I go back to playing Beethoven 5, we're talking about the transition. I'm playing it this week. I play it in an orchestra, playing with this stick. Because now, like, the violins come in here. And you need to hear that, otherwise it can get kind of off. I don't like love that I have to play with that stick, but it's kind of just the way it is. If I play it in an audition, I would play with this stick. So you get a much more mysterioso kind of sound, much better character, but it works. So that kind of, and you apply that to the orchestra. If I'm playing a lot of 2D passages, I generally will use a lot harder sticks constantly. I'm using a lot of, this is like a Baroque wood stick for your percussion. I use a lot for classical stuff. I'm using a ton on Beethoven 5 just because the hall's so wet that I need to. But then let's say a more kind of soloistic thing comes up, generally will switch it around if there are less people playing. It's not a 2D thing. Maybe it's just me and the strings or me and the winds. I don't need the articulation as much anymore. I switch to kind of a softer stick. And to be honest, in the orchestra, I use, well, kind of because of the hall, I use these, and these are all pretty hard sticks. Like this is almost, for general playing, this is almost a soft stick to me. It's still a hard stick. And they're not, auditions, you can get away with a lot of softer sticks. I guess, does that answer your question? Anything else? I mean,
Yeah, I guess just, like, if you're playing a roll passage, would you generally, like, opt for a softer stick, or?
It depends. Okay, yes, especially if it's exposed, I would opt for a softer stick. But that's actually a good question, because I think one of the things I found playing at the orchestras is if it's like a 2D passage, I pick my sticks for rolls based on what I want the attack to sound like, right? So if it's a 2D passage, I want a harder attack, I'll probably, and you might be able to hear the strokes here, but when you get into playing with the orchestra, it all blends. And obviously, as it gets more exposed, they switch to softer and softer sticks. Or even, I just played something, I don't remember, use something like this for soft roll. But I think generally when it's not exposed, you can, in an orchestra, you can get away with using harder sticks. You don't have to worry so much about hearing the individual strokes anymore.
How long is ideally would a head, like you've cleared it and it's balanced and everything and tuned?
Yeah.
How long is ideal for it to stay that way before it kind of gets overused?
Before it gets overused?
Overused or like warped or anything, like how long could it last potentially?
I mean, it depends on how much you're playing it. Like, I think that in an orchestra, when I'm playing, I'm only playing my drums. I don't really practice on them because they're at the hall. I'm just using them in orchestras or concerts and rehearsals. I change them every year, but I think you could stretch it to like a year and a half. For me, if it's something I'm practicing on, I probably change it more frequently, like 6 months or so. And obviously, to me, those are expensive, so it depends on the budget. But like, I noticed. I think you can start when you start. When you play more, you can start feeling when the head is done. Like you lose rebound, you lose the bounce, the kick off the head. And that's the first thing I usually notice because the head's thinning out and stretching in the playing spot.
Anyone who's left in here for solo contest, you can go ahead and line up out by the cafeteria. I believe they can bring
All right, let's do that. How much time do I have? Let's do that. While I'm doing this, is there anything I can answer?
Are there any other solo contests?
Yeah.
Two things, like how do you warm up? And also how do you practice when you don't have a set?
How do I warm up and how do I practice when I don't have a set? I have a Timmy practice pad that I use, but sometimes I'll just play on anything like a pillow, or like I play on a stool, just whatever works. And I warm up. I try to keep kind of my warm-ups quick. I think it's important to. Sometimes we run together warming up and exercising, like trying to work on chops. Always the first thing I do when I warm up is just kind of slow strokes, just like like you do with movements, you know, slow, fast, slow, you know. So I was trying to kind of get that legato stroke and feel the stick bouncing off the head. And just kind of speed up until it feels, the speed up, I shouldn't tell what I'm playing, but speed up until it feels like I'm getting tense, you know, and then I back off and I kind of do that. That's the first thing I do. I'm gonna play like accent patterns. Just like stuff. I mean, I warm up probably the same way that you warm up on any percussion instrument almost. I don't think there's any trick to it. The idea is just to get your hands ready to play, feeling the instrument, and you know, getting the sound that you want. It's right. That's what it warms for. I think I got out of that idea that I need to take like an hour to warm up. You know, I take maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the most to warm up. So let me switch these drums around. What are you guys playing?
Big surface first.
Okay, two. Okay. Who else? Do we need the high drum for anybody? No? You got a stool? No stool. Beethoven 1, right? So, what's that mean? It means, what's it mean? Like, what, do you know what I'm trying to get at? Can you read my mind?
I can't read it.
Okay, well, it's earlier, it's more classical. It's not heavy. You think more of a chamber orchestra, more of a smaller ensemble. So, you know, dynamics are relative. So, let me see. So, I would basically cut like half the line in the first entrance. Because what I want to do is I want this change in dynamics of this fortissimo to be heard. So, right? So, just try it up to there so far. Especially when you start, you seem very loose and relaxed. That's the main thing. Let the stick get the articulation for you. You play almost like you're playing a roll. And try that one more time. And when you go to this drum for the louder dynamic, try the same idea. Don't try not to punch it out. You know, try just lift your sticks higher. Just more stick height. Get the volume from stick height rather than punching down. That's what I'm trying to say. All right, let's see. Try it again. Just those 10 sections. essentially hold the sticks like you're holding like an egg or something. You don't want to squeeze and break it. Just kind of loose, but you don't want to drop it.
Okay.
That kind of idea. Let's see, right? So that's much better already. Here. And just in general, I never really use these. So let's try, try from there a little bit without muting. Great. That's better, and especially if you're muting, I didn't really talk about this, but it's important to figure out how to do it quietly. I just mute. You were kind of doing, I mute more at the edge. One of the things is you don't have to get, if you're muting, most of the time you don't have to get the drums out all the way. If you want to do it that way, touching, not slamming down into the head, trying to get the drums off all the way. But, so, let's see. Actually, let's go back and play the whole thing again. Let's see one more thing. Think chamber, think small ensemble rather than huge orchestra. That's what the style of this piece is. So even when you get to the end, don't try to punch it out. It's like, And that forte should be about where it started. So not too loud yet. Basically, this kind of music is the epitome of life. It goes by very quickly, fast. So you want to stay loose and quick. So just give it one more shot and just try to stay as loose as possible. Don't worry about playing loud. Just your fortissimo should be maybe what you would normally think of as forte. Out of the water and kind of get looked at what you do. This isn't a melody, it's not a solo, it's rhythmic support. So anyway, great job, man.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, ready?
Yeah, I just don't know which knobs I should use.
Would you say you don't know what mallets you should do?
Yes.
What do you got? What are you playing?
Four drum carnival.
Okay. Just bring both up and we'll see what works. little interpretation thing. So when you listen to the melody, right, stylistically, I'm gonna put you on the spot and make you sing, but right, it goes. Right, so that's how I play those rolls, right? I would come in. So I could have put a front on the roll and not so much on the accent, and then this eighth note, you have to bring, it has to come out a little bit more. So let's try that beat, just the first kind of line, and try to get those two things. Right? So just do this and try to bring out the eighth note. Try to make it the same volume as the start of the roll. Right, that's better. Now, think lighter. It's fortissimo, but once again, this is a fast, light piece. It's not super heavy and aggressive. So try that. Just try the B again, and think lighter and more relaxed. Just the first line, yeah. Right. That's all you need, honestly, in the orchestra. That's probably all the volume you're going to need there. And one more thing. So this time, let's try the same thing again, and try to think of actually just putting a beginning on your roll. It doesn't have. This is something. These rolls don't have to be legato. You're going to want a little bit of a tap. Okay, yeah, but just that kind of idea, just a little bit of a tap on the roll as opposed to sustained. Stop sitting really down. Accenting the beginning of the roll, make the volume of the rest of the roll lower. Don't sustain the roll. It doesn't have to be so loud. It's kind of the same idea, just don't attack the rolls as hard. Back off the sustain. Yeah, that's a lot better. Honestly, right? That's about all. That's what you need. We want clarity. That's all you need, like volume-wise. It's much better on all the eighth notes. Everything it's much clearer now. So, do you know how many strokes you're putting in a roll? Do you have like a plan? No.
7.
Probably. Yeah. So yeah, figure that out and do it. Make sure you're doing it the same way every time. I would even go, this is something I would probably just make up my own exercise, just practice this a lot. Put on a metronome and make sure that you're getting the roll and the release in time. And then, I would start, do it this way first. And then maybe you can then add this kind of. Strokes. We come in here, right? I think you played a crescendo there, which is good. Once again, you don't need to get so aggressive at the end, right? So I play. Right? That's about the volume that you need. It doesn't have to be so punchy and aggressive. You're coming back here to maybe mezzo forte or do less, and then crescendo. crescendo, only back to fortissimo, not so overly aggressive and loud. So let's try the second line. all the way to C. Oh,
Lee's
time.
gonna have a minute or two, and then we're just gonna.
Okay, cool. Right. Now, start there. And one thing I want you to think of. When you play the last note, you're doing this. I want you to just take your stick, lift it up behind your ear when you hit the last note, okay? Let's try it, just start, kind of, just do this last crescendo. Right, that's already a better sound. That's already a better sound. It's ringing more, it's not as punchy. So that's the thing, no matter what you're doing, no matter what volume you're playing, always think coming off the drum, playing legato, let the drum rebound and sing. I would just give it one more try and then we'll switch it up, the whole thing. That's already much better. It sounds much more like Carnival Overture does. Just one thing to look at, this rhythm is it's on the end, it's on the upbeat. You're going, just so you can work on that later. But great job, man. Thank you.
Hey, I want to thank Colin for coming in and giving me